What is up, GOAT World? Arts and Crofts back again, bringing you some in-depth coverage of the GOAT Format War League Season 6 playoffs. If you caught my last video, we did a deep dive into the first completed wildcard round between Bads and 400s, where Bads took it down in a 6-0 sweep. Today, we're doing a deep dive into the last remaining round of the wildcard between defending champions R.I.C.O Act and Carbombnara. Now, if you didn't catch my last video, the format for the wars in the playoffs is a little bit different than the regular season. Instead of teams fielding a roster of 5 players, they field a 6-player roster, so squad depth is a little bit more important now that we're in the playoffs. And instead of it just being a single kind of best of 5 one-round war, instead it is a survival-style match where the loser of the individual matches are eliminated, but the winners will then get repaired against the winners from the other team until all of the players on a single team's roster have been defeated. So you can get some really cool storylines where like one player is able to solo the entire team. Of course, pretty unlikely that happens, especially in such a volatile game. But the potential for those really, really exciting hard carry matches is definitely there. Now, also mentioned in the last video, there is a reseed after this quarterfinal or after this wildcard round. So depending on who wins, it will determine the individual matchups for the round of 8 here. So, for example, if Carbombnara wins, they will be the 8th seed playing against the bug catchers. Bads, who we saw win last video, will be the 7th seed, and Nemesis will retain their 6th seed spot. Whereas if R.I.C.O Act is able to win and continue their quest to defend their championship from last year, they will be the 6th seed, bumping Nemesis down to the 7th, and Bads from last video will be the 8th seed. So definitely some very important ramifications from this match. Before we get into kind of the feature match here, we're of course going to do a deep dive into the individual teams, starting with our defending champions, R.I.C.O Act. So they squeaked into the wildcard round with a 6-4 record, and they definitely had to work a little bit to get there. Started out the season going 0-2, now against some very, very strong teams. Strength of schedule is definitely an important consideration here. Bomb Squad and Masters of Oz were two of the teams ahead of them in the conference standings and did get the bye week straight into the quarterfinals. So maybe not entirely odd that they would lose there, but they did have to fight back after going 0-2, which they did for the most part, finishing the season with that 6-4 record to qualify as the 6th seed into the wildcard round. There was a very, very consequential match in the very final week of the regular season between bug catchers. If R.I.C.O were to win that, bug catchers, who is our number 1 seed in the playoffs, they would have actually been tied at a 7-3 record, and it would have been up to tiebreakers to determine the seeding, who would go straight to the bye week, or who would have to play in this wildcard round. So if R.I.C.O is unable to get past Carbombnara here, definitely going to regret this loss here because they could have had a bye straight into the quarterfinals. In terms of the names that they won and lost to, like I said, most of their losses were to teams ahead of them in the rankings so far this season, so maybe not that odd to see outside of Unknown, but they did do a relatively decent job of beating the teams that they were kind of expected to for the most part. And with a team with such a crazy amount of talent, kind of expected for them to clean up against some of these less consistent teams in the league. Now, taking a look at the decks that this team likes to play, very, very different to some of the ones that we looked at last video. The strategy for R.I.C.O definitely seems to be like, hey, we have some of the best players in GOAT format today on our team. R.I.C.O is probably the closest thing to a super team that we have in GOAT format in the War League so far this season. And so they don't really mess around with any of those tier 2 or below decks. They just load up their best strategies every single week with a little bit of tweaks depending on the matchups. But so you can see here, they bring Chaos Turbo 70% of the time almost, with the remaining of the time being split between Chaos Control and Warrior. So they do not mess around for the most part with kind of those more rogue niche strategies. They're just, going to bring the best deck every week, rely on this individual skill of their players to grind out those wins, which they have done to relatively decent success so far this season. And when you look at the players on the roster, definitely makes sense why they're doing that. They had 3 players that were in the top 25 of the MVP rankings in the regular season, and that has very much been the story for R.I.C.O Act so far. They have basically these 3 hard carries that they've been relying on to get the dub pretty much every week, with the rest of the team kind of struggling for consistency, honestly. Now, if you look at these names, right, Purple Drunk, Geisty, Don't Copy, former world champion Ludovico Rizzo, Ale, these are some of the most storied veterans of the format, with countless tops between all of them combined. So it's not like the talent isn't here, right? It's just a lot of these players outside of the top three kind of hard carries that they've had have struggled for consistency. So the story is going to be, okay, will they continue to rely on the Moxies, the Ivans, the Evers of the world, to kind of carry them through the playoffs, or will these players who we know definitely have it in them step up their game and start contributing to the victories of the team each week? To dig in a little bit more into these three hard carries, like I was saying, Moxies is the number one ranked player after the regular season, piloting their patented warrior list, but also not afraid to whip out the Chaos Turbo occasionally, to a pretty insane 8-1 record. Also recently came off a Format Library Championship victory a few weeks ago. So a very, very informed player going into the playoffs here, not just in War League, but also just in GOAT format as a whole. Ivan R.I.C.O, we did a some coverage of on this channel a couple weeks ago as well. Had it also a very, very solid 7-2 record in the regular season, 12th rank in the MVP standings. They are a Chaos Turbo specialist for the most part, so definitely expect them to bring that out here in the playoffs once again. Similar story for Ever here as well, 14th rank in the MVP standings, 6-1 record in the regular season. Kind of a reverse Moxies where they seem to prefer Chaos Turbo, but are not afraid to bring out Warrior in a pinch. They do have Geisty here as well, who is a Chaos Control specialist, which accounts for most of this part of the pie chart. But for the most part, you kind of know what these players are going to bring out every week, which might make prep a little bit easier, but the fact that these are some of the best players in the league doesn't make the prep particularly easy, because even if you counter their deck perfectly, you still have to beat Moxies or beat Ivan or etc., right? Which is no easy task. However, if you are prepping for this team, if you're Carbombnara, you know that they love to play Chaos Turbo. So maybe some of your players who at least have, like, maybe if they're not Warrior specialists, but have Warrior in their back pocket, might be good to bring out just to get a little bit of that counter matchup going. And speaking of Carbombnara, let's go take a look at their season so far here as well. So they also, like I said, squeaked into the playoffs with a 6-4 record. And boy, did they have to work for it, starting the season off 0-3, but managing to win their last 5 weeks in a row on the bounce to sneak in to the 10th seed spot here. So lots of momentum going into the playoffs, but definitely a little bit of an inconsistent season. So we'll see if they can carry this momentum here in the wildcard round against the defending champions. If we take a look at their metagame sort of coverage here, stark difference from R.I.C.O Act, obviously. They do like to bring Chaos Turbo a solid percentage of the time, almost 60%, which isn't that weird, right? This is GOAT format War League. It's, Chaos Turbo is by far the most common deck you'll see. But at the same time, they are willing to bring out some of those tier 2 or even rogue lists to kind of keep their opponents on their toes. You see, they also play Warrior and Chaos Control a decent amount, but we've seen stuff like Chaos Warrior, Panda Burn, Rescue Cat, even Zombies at various points. So they're definitely not afraid to bring some of those niche strategies to keep their opponents on their toes. Doing a little bit of a dive into the individual rosters here, they do have one player who is kind of in MVP contention here, YS Bao, with a 7-2 record in the regular season. Primarily a Chaos Turbo player, but also able to whip out some of the other, Chaos adjacent strategies. Like we said before, they are kind of, willing to play, some sort of warrior strategy. So maybe we'll see them on that here, knowing that they're going against R.I.C.O Act, which is a very Chaos Turbo-centric team. Some other players that really just kind of play whatever they want every single week here. And here and Markor playing 6 different decks in the regular season, which is pretty cool to see. On to definitely a little bit, better success here. With the 5-4 record in the regular season. They seem to favor Warrior for the most part, but are willing to bring out plenty of different strategies, so definitely going to be a little bit difficult to prep here. Markor here, similarly, they played Recent Engage, they played Zombies, they played all different Chaos variants. But I think importantly, a lot of these players have shown that they're willing, right, to at least whip out Warrior or Warrior-like strategies, depending on the week. So could actually be a decent, at least stylistic matchup against R.I.C.O if they're able to, correctly pin them on turbo, get those warrior matchups that they want, or even just kind of stretch the sideboards or the side decks thin of R.I.C.O because they might have to prepare for all of these weird strategies that might eat up additional side deck space. So really interested to see how these two teams will pair off. They were in different conferences in the regular season, so we have no matchup history from the regular season to kind of go off of. We do have the pairings here, though, and we have some pretty interesting matches so far. I don't think there were really any surprises in terms of who made the lineups, but we do have two MVP candidates battling out here with Ever versus YSBow, which will be really interesting. However, what I've selected for the feature match this video is going to be Ivan versus Andend. Ivan, of course, in the MVP hunt, and Andend, as we saw, did also have a winning record in the regular season, so two of the stronger players on both teams here. Ivan, as we know, pretty much expect them to be bringing Chaos Turbo every single week. And then, though, was willing to bring a bunch of different stuff. They favor Warrior, which would be a decent matchup into Turbo, of course. But they were one of the two players that was very much willing to bring kind of the niche stuff. So I'm excited to see what Anden chose to load up here for Wave 1 here of the playoffs. So let's hop right into it. As mentioned last week, in War League, the winner of the matches submits the replay. So normally you would be able to tell that, Anden wins here because they, you watch from the winner's POV. However, I did flip a coin to decide which player we're going to be watching it from the perspective of, so as to not spoil the result of this match if you don't know how it concluded. So let's hop right into it. Like I said, we expect Ivan to be on Chaos Turbo, and then can definitely bring out all sorts of strategies, although Warrior seems to be the most likely one. And then we'll be going first here, though. So let's take a look at what they're playing. They're going to lead out with a Pot of Greed. Always a great start, no matter what list you're playing. So already off to a pretty small lead here, but that is quite nice. And we're going to go set a monster with a couple back row. Doesn't really suggest any sort of deck that they're on, of course. So Ivan's still a little bit in the dark here. Ivan is going to draw for turn, fire off Heavy Storm, looking to get a early +1 to counteract that Pot of Greed. We'll see if Anden has any chainables. And they do. Okay, they're going to chain Ceasefire and Desert Sunlight. Okay, interesting chaining here. So the Desert Sunlight will resolve first, allowing the flip effect to trigger, and then the Ceasefire will happen afterwards. And I believe that should not negate the effect of the flip monster, because Desert Sunlight should make that happen. And we're flipping up Gravekeeper Spy here. Okay, so Anden playing Spy in the main deck alongside Desert Sunlight and Ceasefire. These are cards that you definitely don't expect to see on Chaos Turbo, but maybe you could. Spy generally means they're on Turbo, which we do know Anden plays sometimes. But the Desert Sunlight and the Ceasefire are generally not what you see paired with that. So still not entirely sure what Anden could be playing here. I mean, I guess these are all cards that could be played in burn lists, although Sunlight and Spy are they don't always make the cut. But I guess that's kind of what I would be leaning towards here if I was Ivan, if you see these cards in the main deck from our opponent. Spy will summon out another copy of itself. Ivan will take, Ivan should take 500 because the Spy effect will trigger after the Ceasefire, right? Yeah, that makes sense. Just a little check in the effects. Yeah, a little bit of an interesting interaction, but I think this was correct. I think the players played it right. Just do a little bit of a check with the judges. Okay, cool. They got the okay. Definitely makes sense to me. And then Ivan is going to go ahead and T-set pass. So interesting. Heavy there did answer both of these cards. Desert Sunlight essentially traded for a second Spy. But you did sort of recuperate the card advantage that you lost from the Pot of Greed, right? Because forcing out a Ceasefire for only 500 damage and not actually negating like one of Ivan's foot monsters is pretty solid. So we're kind of all square here. Ivan trying to wall out these Spies, though. We'll see what Anden has. And if they can start getting their beatdown on here. Like I said, pretty likely that they're on some sort of burn list here, but not guaranteed. You're going to fire off main deck Mind Control. So even if you are playing burn, if you're on the Spy version, that does let you get away with main deck Mind Con here. And you can see, some of the anti-Chaos Turbo tech that you would expect when you're playing against R.I.C.O Act to get value. So main deck Minecon, main deck Ceasefire, definitely some solid options against players that are going to be playing Chaos Turbo 70% of the time, right? And then finds Magician of Faith as well. That is really nice. So we're just going to go Mind Control the opponent's Faith and steal Pot of Greed to resolve 2 pots in the first 2 turns. Feels really good if you're on dent here. Definitely going to be pretty far ahead after resolving this pot. Not looking too good for Ivan here, at least in game one, but still plenty of Yu-Gi-Oh left to play, of course. Pot resolves into Graceful Charity as well. Okay, maybe not so much Yu-Gi-Oh left to play, but of course anything can happen. And then gonna go discard the third spy. Pretty good discard fodder there. And then a gravity bind. Okay, so definitely running some sort of burn list here with the gravity bind in the main. We did see them also play Rescue Cat in the regular season, but I feel like you're not running main deck spy and Rescue Cat, so this is probably just a burn list where they're on main deck spy to facilitate the main deck mind control as kind of like a pre-sideboard or pre-side deck list for the expected Chaos Turbo matchup. So pretty interesting prep here from Anden, but it seems to be working so far here with that mind control going absolutely insane. We're going to go normal summon Giant Rat as well, so really getting a lot of attack points on the board. You can, of course, keep one or both of these spies in defense to play around the likely main deck Mirror Force, but we'll see exactly what Anden chooses to do. Yeah, so playing around it by keeping one spy in defense, but we'll be able to punch in for 2,600 with the other two monsters. Mirror Force is going to come out here, though, and then probably happy they played around it. Notably, though, this will kill Ivan's own Magician of Faith, though, so won't be able to get that back and reset it if they have like a Tsukiyomi in hand. Yeah, so overall, I think, and then you're fine getting hit by this Mirror Force. It's not the end of the world, and you still have a spy sticking around, and you also, resolved double Pot of Greed this game. So you can afford to like go slightly minus occasionally, and you'll still be pretty far ahead. Gonna set a couple back row here as well. I've been very far behind in terms of cards, but hasn't taken too much damage to their life points just yet. So maybe can find their way back into this. Just gonna go similar play as last turn. T-set pass. Nothing crazy. You baited out, or not baited out, but you forced out a Minecon from your opponent, so any future flip monster is a little bit more likely to resolve, potentially. And End here has another main deck Minecon, so at least two in the main. So very, very... Yeah, and, you can just see it by looking at those pie charts from the players. You're very likely to come up against Chaos Turbo when you're playing R.I.C.O Act, so you can stack your deck with these main deck Minecons to pretty safely. And let's see, we snagged a Sangan. Okay, so Ivan, getting at least a little bit of a plus there by making the opponent, whiff on the mind control. However, it does move the monster out of the way for this big beater in Injection Fairly to come down and get a lot of damage through. Ivan is generally not a main deck torrential player, so you can do this pretty much with impunity for the most part. And Mirror Force is already gone, so this is definitely going to connect unless Ivan has like Ring or Raigeki Break ready to go. Just going to send both these monsters. Like I said, no reason to play around Mirror Force anymore. And this is a lot of potential damage coming through here. Ring is going to be used on the Lily, though. So better to take 400 than 3,400. So Ivan at least using their defensive traps a little bit well so far to keep their life points pretty high. But this spy will connect and do a decent bit of damage. And once again, Anden is actually up relatively significantly in cards. They have a level limit area B here, too, in main phase 2, which is a little bit interesting. It does turn off Spy. You can no longer beat in with that. Would have been a lot nicer if you still had this Lily around. But maybe we have like some premature, call it the Haunted action to pair with that in the future. Notably, Ivan does have one of the best cards in their list against these battle floodgates already on the field in the form of the Sangans. It is a level 3. But it's just going to run into a defensive position spy for the time being. So not really going to be able to get too much offensive work done at this moment. Ivan will draw for turn. Sanga got flip summoned by Anden, so it will be face up. Ivan found Graceful Charity, though. Not a bad draw to try and work their way back into this game. Going to go discard a Spy and a Dekoichi. Okay, so getting Chaos live. Getting a couple darks to pair with the light from the Magician of Faith. See what they chose to keep here. We're just going to go set a monster pass. So interestingly, they got rid of Spy, got rid of Dekoichi. Now, Spy, not a very good card against Burn, because it doesn't really pair well against like Ojama Trio. But Dekoichi is generally a good card against Burn, so must have kept something a little bit stronger. Could also be just another copy of Dekoichi, of course, that's set there. But lots of stuff for Anden to potentially worry about at this point in time. Just going to go set a monster pass. Chilling behind this battle floodgate. Totally fine. You had a very aggressive opener with Double Minecon, Spy, Rat, Lily. Ivan did have to utilize a lot of their, one-off defensive options to deal with that. But when the dust settles, Ivan is decently high life points, but Anon is happy to just sit behind this floodgate and draw back up into some more burn cards and make Ivan's life a little bit difficult. So Ivan's going to need to have to find an out to not only this level limit, but also Gravekeeper Spy on its own is almost like a battle floodgate, right? With just the 2000 defense being difficult to deal with. And so, and then definitely has the inevitability here. So Ivan's going to have to find an answer soon. Otherwise, and then we'll just draw enough burn cards to kill them over time. We're going to get Samife's Ojama Trio here. So Trio locking Ivan. Did, slightly risky play setting this monster, creating this lock. But, when you're behind, sometimes you just have to make plays. So not that crazy. We go to main phase 1. Ivan has Pot of Greed. Okay, so has drawn a couple Trinity pieces the last couple turns to at least equalize the card advantage a little bit. Upstart Goblin continuing to dig into the deck. Trying to find some of that back row removal. Thunder Dragon would be nice to tribute over the Sangan maybe. We're going to go flip summon Magician of Faith. Okay, so Pot and Graceful in the grave. Heavy Storm also really solid at this point in time as well. And then likely was not playing around the Heavy Storm because you already know your opponent used it. So maybe doesn't have a lot of chainables in the back row here. A lot of choices here for Ivan. I can understand going for Pot, Heavy, or Graceful at this point in time. So really going to depend on what your reads are of your opponent's back row and what else you have in hand. Going to grab the Heavy here, so going to try and make progress. Definitely the most offensive choice. And like I said, Ivan is, you might not be able to tell, but Ivan is very much on a clock here. So I like the Heavy Storm pickup just to kind of push the issue and try and make some stuff happen. Going to fire off the Heavy, of course, and then does have Just Desserts and Secret Barrel as chainables, though. So this is going to be a plus in card advantage for Ivan, but lots of damage coming through from both of these burn cards, so you're still pretty happy about this if you're end. Yeah, Ivan drops down to 1400. Yeah, a full damage Just Desserts plus 2000 from Secret Barrel at or above rate for both of them, so looking pretty good here for end. Their Battle Floodgate is gone, but Ivan might not have a way to get through this Gravekeeper Spy, so it might not even matter, like I was saying. Kind of redundant effects there. And the same, outside of Regeki Break, right, the same removal doesn't work for both of these. So it's nice, basically backup Battle Floodgates here. And you can see how, Spy, like I was saying, not the most often played card in Burn, but it can be very, very useful because not only does it get you 2,400 attack points on the board for the cost of a single normal summon, which is pretty insane, especially in a deck trying to do a bunch of damage. It also, as we can see here, acts as redundant Battle Floodgates in case your opponent has the back row removal to deal with your Gravity Binds, your level limits, and your Swords of Revealing Lights. And Ivan here, yeah, despite having that Heavy Storm to clear out the Battle Floodgate, just has no way of getting through this Spy. And then, despite, going down a bunch of cards, is going to be in a position, at least for the time being, where they can continue to just draw up and, a single Just Desserts or a single Secret Barrel is just GG at this point. So it's only a matter of time before Andon can win. And Ivan has been unable to deal any damage to their opponent yet. So things are still looking good for our Burn player, despite being quite behind in card advantage. We're just going to go flip some in Cyber Jar as well. This is almost definitely GG. I believe Ivan takes the 900 from the trio tokens off of this. Yeah, because they do get destroyed. Yeah, destroy all monsters on the field. So Ivan takes 900 from the trio tokens dying, and End is just going to spin into a bunch of likely very powerful stuff here. Yeah, Ring, yeah, Just Desserts, Ring on Giant Rat, all cards that can just do it here. Panda is going to be really nice as well. I guess if you're Ending, you're just going to summon Panda and Rat here, and then set all of your back row. Ivan can't put anything in the way, so might just get attacked for game here right now by this Rat or this Panda. And yeah, looking really good for our Burn player. Not only were they already significantly far ahead in the life point race, resolving a Jar is just almost always GG for a Burn player, so going to be really tough for Ivan to close this one out, and I think it's probably just going to be GG right now with this Panda and this Rat hitting the board. Especially with no Mirror Force to worry about and likely no Torrential. Sangan Search from Ivan will grab Sinister. Probably not going to matter. Just go attack for game. And there you have it. Game 1 going to end. So kind of what you expect to happen game 1 as the Burn player, especially against Chaos Turbo. Turbo has generally a lot of cards to bring in against Burn. So you're kind of hoping to win game 1 before the side deck hate comes in. and then eke out one of those two games. So kind of going according to plan, both for Andan and Ivan. I feel like you probably expect to lose game one against Burn. So really, these next two games are going to be the important deciders. Ivan post side will be able to go first here in game two with all of their side deck hate coming through. We might see some Mystic Walks, some extra back row removal like Dust Tornadoes and Raigeki breaks, which will make Andan's life a lot more difficult. So Ivan here going to lead out with Upstart Goblin, just looking to draw into those side deck hate cards. Really important to just speed up the deck. Firing off Thunder Dragon as well, so thinning the deck nicely. Getting a Light Engrave. And then a couple back row pass. So no normal summon being used just yet, but speeding up the rate at which they're going through the deck and finding those key cards against Burn. So decent start. End here has a Sangan, though, to start applying some pressure. Not bad. Going to beat in for 1,000. Ivan will take it. And then End will set a couple back row pass. Sure. Ivan here has a set monster of their own, so must have just drawn that for turn, otherwise likely would have seen it last turn. But trying to wall out the Sangan as best they can. Does Andan have one of those double Minecons we saw in the main? Relatively likely. Just going to go crash in with the Sangan, killing Ivan's Sangan. Okay, so this gets Light and Dark Engrave for Ivan. They get to search up something like Magician of Faith would be nice, or maybe a Sinister Serpent. Going to grab that Serp. Definitely a pretty common Sangan search. And all is pretty good for our Chaos Turbo player for the most part right now. And then is going to add another set monster to the field. Any Jar is scary, of course. We'll see if Ivan has anything to deal with it. Let's see, we're going to go slam down Chaos Sorcerer. Nice, efficient way of dealing with the Sangan. So pretty nice, getting a nice plus there. Fire off Jar of Greed as well. Then we find Card Destruction. Yeah, so one of those anti-burn sort of hate pieces. It's not obvious why it's good against burn, but like I was saying before, Turbo versus burn is one of those matchups where card advantage doesn't really matter as much, like we saw last game. Andon was down 1,000,000 cards, but they were able to convert those cards to damage and close out the game. That's kind of the deck's game plan, right? So it's not, card advantage doesn't matter as much as finding the right cards, right? So post side, Turbo's going to have a lot of anti-burn cards, like Mystic Walks, like Dust Tornadoes, things like that. And Card Destruction, a well-timed one, will just help you draw into that good stuff. You don't really care about loading up the burn player's graveyard like you would against other decks that play their own Chaos monsters, so there really is no downside to playing Card D for the most part. So Ivan's going to get a really, really big one off here. Going to really churn through their deck and find those key cards. Slam the Sork on the board as well, so really, really solid start to game 2 here from Ivan. Yeah, has those Thunder Dragons in hand to cash in as well. So really nice combo there, basically getting a free card destruction. And the Sinister Serpent off the Sangan as well. I forgot about that. Yeah, so really, really high value card destruction. Cashing in double TD and Sinister. Interesting that they're discarding MST, because that is one of those, good cards against burn, but maybe just looking to find like a knock or a Minecon. Or probably just knock. You're not going to bring Minecon in against burn. So maybe just trying to maximize the chances that they can find a knock here and deal with the set monsters, my guess. Sakuretsu Armor, also another card that comes in post-side against burn. It's good to see. And then here, losing Kaiku, Panda, and Rat, so a pretty monster-heavy hand. Not really what you want to see as a burn player, so maybe kind of happy that Ivan is card destructioning here. But Ivan definitely the bigger benefactor of this card with the Sinister plus double TD hitting the grave. Let's see. Ivan did find a knock, so yeah, I think that was kind of the play there. Was able to find it. And then does play Desert Sunlights, though, so they could make this fizzle by chaining the Sunlight here if they so choose. It's going to hit a Spy, though. Okay, so both players going to lose any Spies that they have. Ivan playing at least one copy. That is a card that you generally cut post-side against burn, like I said, because it doesn't match up too well against Trio. But you can keep one in as like really good Mystic Walk fodder. That's pretty common. So I wouldn't be surprised if this was like the only Spy copy left in Ivan's list. And NN will just lose all copies of theirs. I'm going to go set a monster alongside this Sork, set a back row as well. Yeah, and they're just in a really solid spot here, having really churned through their deck with that card destruction and finding the knock to answer the opponent's set. Of course, it was just a Spy, it wasn't a Jar or anything, but still really good to prevent burn from resolving their flip monsters because they do have some haymakers in the list. And then here, still, still not out of it. Still 9,000 life points, so in a pretty solid spot in terms of that. As the mind control here, and we're going to use it on the set monster instead of the Sork. So if I've invaded here, could be a really, really good play for them. It's Magician of Faith again, though. So, and then really, these mind cons are really working out, stealing the Faith. Really only the mind control in the grave to use, but now you can just use it to answer the Chaos Sorcerer, so that's actually pretty nice. Yeah, so Sork Banish itself, of course. And now Ivan's board has been completely answered just by that single mind con. So really nice work of prep here from and building the deck. Both bringing out kind of one of these less commonly seen match or decks to make the prep a little bit harder, but also building it in such a way that it counters what R.I.C.O likes to bring. And so far it's been working out quite nicely. Going to go set another back row and add the level limit. Okay. So nothing crazy just yet. Of course, a lot of monsters already hit the grave, so maybe not some very proactive threats available. But now, once again, just looking to set up camp behind this level limit and draw back into the big damage dealing cards. Ivan here can re-grab the Sinister Serpent that they just discarded off of the card destruction. And we got Tsukuyomi. Oh, that is humongous. Suk loops are very, very effective against burn. You can recur your Mystic Walks, you can recur your power back row removal cards like MST or Card Destruction, get you another knock in a pinch if you're worried about a jar. Really, really solid here if Andan can't deal with this. And lots of options to grab. Let's see, we're going to grab MST. Good answer to that Battle Floodgate, of course. Going to poke in for 300, better than nothing. I'm going to go set a couple back row pass. Suk will get bounced back to hand and can do the same thing again next turn. And suddenly Ivan is in an even better position because this Suk loop is just going to go insane if Andan can't answer it. So really, really good stuff here from the Chaos Turbo list. And then just going to pass. And Ivan can just do the whole thing again if they so choose. We're going to get Standby Phase, Jar of Greed. Chain MST on the level limit. So floodgates literally have opened. Do we go for the Suk again? Yeah, might as well. Flip it up, grab MST, continue to whittle away at this back row. Poke in for 14 is pretty nice. And yeah, Ivan is just happy to keep this status quo going. Slowly ground out the opponent and just remove all of their resources. Thanks to the infinitely recurring Magician of Faith here. Yep, draw go from Andend. And this is so important, right? Because Andend really can't afford to set new back row because it's just going to get killed by MST every turn. So kind of forced to keep the cards in hand, which is not where you want them as the burn player. Ivan can also just continue, even if Andend doesn't set new back row, then MST can just whittle away the existing ones as well, so still getting value. And yeah, I think Ivan is just so far ahead at this point. Has the clock as well, even if it's not the biggest one in the form of that Tsukuyomi. And it's just going to be really, really tough for Andend to come back from this position. See, MST is going to pop. Okay, we're going to get Ojama Trio forced out here, but doesn't prevent the Suk loop because there'll still be a remaining monster zone, of course. Ivan has Suk. Yeah, just rinse and repeat. Regrab that MST. This is just textbook turbo versus burn post-side gameplay. Beat in for 14 again. Yeah, you really just don't even care about the trio tokens. You only need 2 monster zones to make this combo work, so trio not doing a whole lot here. And even if Andan has like a Just Desserts or Secret Barrel to deal a lot of damage, now that these trios tokens are on the board, he's probably just going to get sniped by that MST that is being activated a million times in a single game. We're going to get end phase Just Desserts here, so this is a max damage Just Desserts, which is a little bit scary for Ivan. We're going to chain Raigeki Break to pop a Goat token there. Okay, that's pretty nice. So 500 less damage from the Just Desserts. You will take 300 from the token dying, but is a net positive. It does free up an extra monster zone for the future as well. Makes future Pandas and Just Desserts a little bit weaker. And discarding Night Assailant to bounce back another Magician of Fate the hand. And getting a Dark Engrave to turn on future Chaos. So really nice play here out of Ivan, killing like 5 birds with 1 stone here with this Raigeki Break. Still going to take a decent chunk of damage from the Just Desserts, plus Trio Token death, but you just set up for a million different things with that one play, and you're still so far ahead, so yeah, definitely worth doing at this point. Bait back to hand. So even if Enden can answer one, the second one can come down and continue to do the same thing. And then really between a rock and a hard place here. Does have Ivan down to 4,700, but any new back row is likely to just die to this MST, right? So it's going to be really hard for them to stick any future damage. Yeah, see, they can just kind of make their way through all the stuff that they had set before the Sukuk was established, which was this trio and this Just Desserts, and now they're just unable to really play any of their other cards, so Ivan likely will just be able to stabilize here at roughly this 4,700, pending whatever this other back row is. And it does have a monster set in the way, though. But unless it's Big Shield Gardna, right, Ivan can just go ahead and go Souk Loop, grab knock, banish that. So, yeah. I mean, this Faith, absolute all-star this game. Could just grab whatever the best card for the given scenario is. Often it's going to be MST. Scenarios like this, it's knock. Really fine here. Going to go end phase MST. On the last remaining back row, so it was Secret Barrel. So Enden able to get a little bit of value here out of all of that back row set pre-Souk Loop. But now it's going to be really tough for them to push through any extra damage. It is a little bit awkward, right? Because Ivan can't re-grab this MST this turn if they want to re-grab the knock. But you have so many other cards that you can probably... Like, even if you can't grab MST, you probably have, like, a Dust Tornado or a Raigeki Break ready to go. So, not the end of the world. Let's see. We're going to go Souk, grab... Card Destruction, and then Chain Torrential Tribute. Okay, so likely setting up for some sort of OTK here with lots of Light Dark Engrave. Seems pretty likely to me. Killing Cyberjar is pretty nice. You will drop all the way down to 1,700, but if you can just summon like Sork plus BLS, doesn't really matter. BLS comes down. Card D digging for Sork probably. Plus like Breaker would be good, just to get a bunch of damage. Yeah, Sork, nice. Yeah. And then gonna attack in for... Okay, so it didn't have full lethal just yet, but really able to get a massive clock on the board, wipe the board, and all that stuff. So definitely makes sense to me. And I will be able to pass with lethal on board, and then won't have too many cards going. They could just have like trio plus desserts, which would be scary. But I feel like Ivan was probably prepared for that. Otherwise, you're not going for this card D, right? Pot of Greed for Andon is nice, though. We're going to pot into T-set, or pot into set 3 pass. So trio plus desserts is game if Ivan doesn't have, like, walk or anything. We're going to end phase Raigeki Break, though. Popping one of the sets. Night Assailant has the free discard as well, which is nice. Can bounce back the other Night Assailant if you so choose. Gets a trio. Okay, so turns off the dessert play. Getting Deco in hand, which is just a nice big beater at this point. BLS banish the set. Heavy Storm, and yeah, that's going to be game. All right, so very well played there for Ivan in game 2. Setting up that Souk loop, really grinding the opponent down. Using, all of those deck thinning cards like Jar of Greed, Upstart, and Card Destruction, most importantly, to find those key pieces that you need against Burn. And then whittled down the opponent's card advantage, and then was able to just close it out with a nice little double chaos play there at the end. So we will go to game 3. Once again, right on schedule. Burn wins game 1. Turbo wins game 2. And now this is for all the marbles here. Game 3, Burn will be able to go first, which is advantageous towards them, but it is post side, which is very advantageous to Chaos Turbo. So this is kind of where, these matchups generally end up, where this final game is going to be the final decider of it all. Let's see if Enden can get off to a strong start here. Just going to go draw, pass. Okay, so nothing crazy, no back row, no monsters. Ivan probably pretty happy about that, to be perfectly honest. Going to fire Upstart Goblin, trying to draw into some stuff like we saw last game. T-set pass. Decent start, no Trinity from either player, though, so going to be a nice, clean game here in game 3. And in here has the Mind Control. On the Night Assailant, okay, so not really the end of the world for Ivan. It is a flip monster that you can at least put away. Or turn off by flipping face up, but you won't be going crazy by mind controlling a Faith or anything like we saw the last couple games. You still flip it up though, of course. Ooh, and then Enden has Injection Fairy Lily to come down here, so really, really big damage. Gonna get in for 34 potentially, and Ivan is forced to Raigeki Break it. Okay, it is just gonna be a nice 1-for-1 though. Has the Sinister Serpent as the free discard, so this Lily once again will not be able to connect in. Ivan will protect our life points pretty nicely. Kind of all square here through the first couple turns. Not the end of the world. Gonna set a back row pass. Knight Assailant goes back. Both players still jockeying for position here. Ivan can re-grab that Sinister Serpent, of course, having already gotten value from it. Just gonna go Knight Assailant to defense. Set a monster, set a back row. Nothing crazy, but getting some threats on the board. And then here has Swords of Revealing Light. Okay, flipping up Tsukuyomi. That's kind of cute. So you can go ahead and flip face down this Knight Assailant. Interesting play. Ivan could have gone for a little bit of damage there. With normal Suk, set the Knight Assailant, get in for 11. But choosing to maybe try and bait out another Minecon or something like that by setting a bluff. And it does sort of bait out this Swords. So interesting play. Kind of paid off, kind of didn't. I mean, I guess you still get to flip your Knight Assailant face down, though, which is pretty nice. And now you can use it to kill this set monster. Okay, so Andan setting a monster into no Knight Assailant. Interesting mind game. You're just going to flip it out, surely, right? Oh, well, you got Desert. Okay, that makes perfect sense. Forgot about Desert Sunlight. But yeah, Sunlight here as a way to at least make the flip effect resolve. Even if this Knight Assailant effect will come through. Ivan does have to think, because if this is a jar or something, this could be pretty scary to allow resolve. And Ivan's going to have to go Raigeki breaks, pop that back row. Hitting that sideboard jar, yeah, so nice read there. Pretty likely that that's a jar when the opponent, sets it into the no Knight Assailant, knowing that they have the Desert Sunlight. So Ivan, once again, having the Sinister in hand as the free Raigeki break discard is pretty nice. And, you basically just got to trade Raigeki break and the Knight Assailant flip for 2 cards. So this is actually a big swing for Ivan. Can't attack this turn because of the swords unless you have like an MST or something. But you can once again reset your Knight Assailant with the Tsukuyomi, which is, virtual card advantage because it's going to make Andan a lot less likely to want to set any monsters in the future. Because now that their Desert Sunlight is gone, they can't do this, cute play to play around the Knight Assailant flip. So Ivan, I think, in a pretty good spot at this point. Once again, hasn't been able to really do any damage yet, but just kind of winning the card advantage game a little bit here so far. First turn of swords is gone, and it says draw go, just chilling behind this floodgate. I guess one way you can continue to stall this out is if you just don't flip this Knight Assailant, or if you just don't play anything into this Knight Assailant. It's not like Ivan is really threatening you with anything at this point in time. Ivan here adding another set monster. Honestly, you could just run it back with the Tsukuyomi again and try and bait out another Minecon or something. That could be a decent play. See what Andan has here. Second turn of swords gone. Just going to set a back row pass. Okay. And phase MST on that, hitting an Ojama trio. Okay, so preventing the trio lock from coming down. Another nice win there for Ivan. Top deck Thunder Dragon. All right, not bad. Continuing to thin that list. Flip someone to Koichi, drawing another card. Can't attack with it because it's the last turn of swords. But Ivan is honestly slowly kind of grinding this one out. Just needs to find a way to deal damage. You could go normal summon Suk, set the Koichi back face down. That doesn't seem too terrible. We're just going to go set a monster here. So keeping the Suk in hand potentially. Not crazy. Swords is gone now, so you can start attacking in next turn. Unless Andan has another floodgate, of course. And in here has the level limit area B. So we've got redundant floodgates on redundant floodgates. That was kind of the key to game 1 as well, right? Even when their level limit got answered, they had the spy to protect them. Here, when their swords runs out, they have a level limit. Ivan already used an MST and 2 Raigeki breaks, so a little bit light on the back row removal now with a lot of the key pieces being gone. And that might be, kind of the decider here, potentially. Ivan here is going to flip summon Suk, go for the little Koichi loop again. So Ivan has been able to establish another Suk loop here. It's not the Faith one to infinitely recur Mystical Space Typhoon, but oftentimes can be just as good because you get to churn through your deck and find those missing keys or pieces to your puzzle. I'm going to go set another monster and a back row. Suk gets bounced back. Having the third monster is nice to prevent any top deck trios from being usable from end, but needs to find an answer to this level limit. Otherwise, you're just not really making any progress just by drawing a million cards every turn. If you can't play them to profit because of level limit, doesn't really matter. So really just the key is, does Ivan have enough juice left in the list to deal with these floodgates, having already used a lot of the key ones? And then here has knock on the new set, hitting the Sinister Serpent. So getting a lot of use this game. Couple of Raigeki break discards, plus eating a knock. You're probably fine with that if you're Ivan. This could set up for an Odrama Trio play for Mandan, though, which will prevent the Tsukuyomi loop from continuing, because then you don't have any room to normal summon it. So Ivan could be stranded with just Knight Assailant Dekoichi on the board if Andan had a trio. So pretty key turn here. If Andan can establish that trio lock, Ivan might be in a pretty rough spot. And then sets a back row pass. So if this is trio, nope, gets to main phase 1. Okay, so we can go for Tsukuyomi. We're actually just going to go normal summon Sangan, which, like I mentioned before, is level 3. It is difficult to deal with. So this is going to be a nice clock here for Ivan, which is the one thing they were missing from this game plan. Sure, you can infinitely draw cards with the Dekoichi, but if you have no way to pressure the opponent, a little scary. Sangan is going to come through, though, and now put the pedal to the metal a little bit. It is a 9-turn clock, which is, better than nothing. Start beating it for 1,000 a turn. And then takes the hit, and Ivan will pass the turn. And then here, going to set a back row pass. Sangan could do a lot of work in these scenarios. Suk on the Dekoichi, continue to draw cards. And will this Sangan, the little Sangan that could, is this going to be enough? Going to go to end phase, or we're just going to discard Thunder Dragon to get it out of the hand, make the Secret Barrel math a little bit worse. It definitely makes sense to me. And had to discard for hand size anyway, so that seems fine. And then here, facing down the Sangan, but if you can out it, you're in a decent spot, right? Unless Ivan finds an out to this level limit. Real think here, we're going to go just desserts for 1,500. Okay. Into Secret Barrel for 2,200. Okay, so Secret Barrel above rate, just desserts a little bit below rate, but combining for a good chunk of damage. Ivan drops down to 4,300. Secret Barrel for another 22. Okay, so Andan has been stacking up these burn cards, hasn't even needed to resolve a trio. It's another 22. Oh, yeah, so it should be 24 for both. Yeah, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24. Yeah, okay, so Ivan suddenly, out of nowhere, double barrel plus desserts, down to 1,700 life points. And you can see exactly why I say it's so important that you can actually, clock your burn opponent. And that's why these floodgates are played, right? Because eventually they're just going to draw these cards. This game, it happened kind of sooner rather than later. A little bit of kind of ahead of pace, I think, Andan is here. But you don't have all day against burn, right? Because this is going to happen eventually. Unfortunately for Ivan, it seems to happen a little bit earlier than I probably would have liked. But this is just, you could plus 1,000,000 times with your Dekoichi plus Tsukuyomi. But the burn player is eventually just going to draw their burn cards and kill you if you can't kill them. And that might be what we see happen here. Ivan is down to 1,700 life points. They are dead to another Secret Barrel. They're dead to a Just Desserts if another monster hits the board. Ring almost kills as well with that Dekoichi. Panda would do a lot of damage here as well. Oh, and it's going to fire off a Heavy Storm, so maybe looking for a little bit of a Panda setup here. For game, Ivan, do you have anything to chain? Do you have Mystic Walk? We're going to go Book of Moon on the Sangan. Okay. And then hitting a Saku and a Dust Tornado. Okay, so Ivan had the out to the level limit. Unless that was just set. But no, I think that was set a while ago. So really holding on to that for a while, not looking to get too crazy with their stuff, but maybe giving Andan a little bit too much time here. And this might just be game right here. We're going to go normal summon Panda. This is, a 2,300 attack point Panda. So is this lethal over... Yeah, this is lethal over Knight Assailant, right? Yeah, and that is game. And there you have it. Wow, Andan there, despite being down, once again, similar to Game 1, down 1,000,000 cards thanks to... Well, in Game 1 it was different, but here, down 1,000,000 cards thanks to Tsukuyomi plus Dekoichi, but had the flurry of burn cards plus the Panda right at the end to seal this game, and this is going to be Andan on Panda Burn, taking it down 2-1, knocking out Ivan R.I.C.O on their classic Chaos Turbo list. From Wave 1 of these playoffs, that is a pretty big win here for Carbombnara, knocking out one of the toughest opponents on R.I.C.O Act. So Now, Ivan will be eliminated from the wild card round, and Anden will, assuming there wasn't like a sweep, will continue to play on against any of the winners that were on R.I.C.O Act. So we do actually have the results of Wave 1 here. As we saw, Anden was able to beat Ivan. And actually, notably, Anden was the only Carbombnara player to win their Wave 1 match. So despite Ivan falling here in Wave 1, the rest of R.I.C.O did have their back, and we do have 5 remaining players of R.I.C.O Act ready to take on Anden. So the way this works is R.I.C.O will pick one player to match up against Anden next time, and we will continue. Basically, we play until Anden loses, right? Or either Anden will sweep the entire of R.I.C.O Act, which is quite a tall task, but definitely possible, or we play until one of these players is able to beat Anden, in which case R.I.C.O wins this. So Anden, the last bastion of hope for Carbombnara here in the wildcard round. You are locked into your list once you've submitted for Wave 1, so Anden will have to play the rest. Will have to beat R.I.C.O Act by themselves with Panda Burn every single match, which is a little bit of a tall task, like I said, but definitely possible. So definitely check back in. Next video, we are going to see who Anden ends up getting paired against out of the 5 remaining players from R.I.C.O Act and see if they can keep Carbombnara's playoff dreams single-handedly alive, or if R.I.C.O will be able to seal this win in a couple waves and move on to the quarterfinals. Really hope you enjoyed this match and team profile coverage. Like I said, check in tomorrow. We'll be doing end versus whoever R.I.C.O decides to send out against them in the next game. Hope you enjoyed this all. Let me know what you think down in the comments, and I will catch you all next time.